What does a game interface have in common with a non-game interface? Why does a game's interface suck you into the story while an app's is just there to help? Stick with me to see what's going on. What if I told you that all these elements on the game interface are actually very important? The game interface is something that may seem very simple on the one hand, but on the other hand, it complements the game, evokes emotions, or even teaches you something new, something that you don't pay close attention to while running around another location or completing a game task. After all, at the dawn of the game industry, the game interface was represented by simple shapes and text layers indicating how many points you had earned. The interface in games, modern games, is a part of players' immersion in the context. It's the interface that gives a players a sense of control over the situation. It can be subtle or obvious and convey a ton of information, depending on the genre and the game design itself. Need to know how much life you have left? Here's a health bar. Don't know where to go or how to move through the story? Here is minimap and a display of the task on the screen. Want to make other settings in the game to get whopping 60 frames per second on your old machine? Not a problem. Here's a flexible settings system. But you better upgrade your old 1080 GeForce video card.
Huh?
Some designs are overly complicated, while others are simplified. All of this matters to the player, whether they have 1,000 hours in Call of Duty or are a casual gamer who wants to play the new title from the greatest maestro, Kojima, Death Stranding 2. The interface in gaming industry is part of the fun and also solution to problems related to communication in the gaming world. It's not an additional attribute, but a mandatory one. It is what shapes and complements the user's immersions in the process. And in works such as games, the process is the most important aspect of gaming experience. Buttons, indicators, and hints influence how the user interacts with a particular object in the environment. Depending on the game, its mechanics, and designer's narrative, they choose what and how to display on the screen at any given moment. There is no clear visual patterns here that we see in ordinary applications such as a Trello or Google Docs, where for the interface we can use the entire screen and then play with the content. The game interface is about symbiosis, prioritization, and harmony with the game world. Let's look at one of my favorite examples of the game interface, Death Stranding. In my opinion, it's a quintessence of genius with a capital G. Kojima conveys to us how simple and at the same time complex the world is, where in the post-apocalyptic world, futuristic design and the display of the smallest details harmonize. From the usual health bar to the terrain indicator. This gives the game depth and fresh feel, and despite thousand visual elements and menus, the interface feels like consistent and appropriate. But let's digress for a couple of minutes, because Death Stranding isn't the only thing that deserves our attention. I'd like to take a moment to talk about the different types of interfaces and what they are for, and how they differ from ordinary, non-gaming interfaces. Currently, there are four types of gaming interfaces: non-diegetic, diegetic, spatial, and meta. Let's start with non-diegetic. You're familiar with this type of interface as it was the first to appear in games. For example, games such as Apex or Doom. This type of interface is inherent to them. It consists of simple sprites, mainly 2D, on our screen. Health bars, stamina, ammos, and selected weapon. It's ultimate solution for almost any game. It's relatively simple to implement and gives you complete control over what it happens on the screen. Next is the diegetic interface. In my opinion, is the most underrated, but at the same time complex interface. For example, Dead Space and Metro. The distinctive features of this interface are depth and immersions in the process. In Dead Space, it's a main character's health indicator, and in Metro, it's a map on the tablet. The distinctive features of this type are maximum immersion in the game and enhanced narrative aspect. Yes, this type gives the player less control. It's a little unusual and it's not suitable for all games. But if you choose the right genre, it will be best mark for player immersion. On the other hand, a diegetic interface requires a lot of experience and understanding of the game in order to provide a seamless experience for the player. Okay, the next type is pedal. The best example of this is VR or AR games and applications, of course. But I can also note that there are elements on this interface in regular games. For instance, Left 4 Dead 2 has game characters highlighted with outline behind walls. Or for example, the Far Cry series, where you highlighting enemies when using binoculars. The main feature of this interface is the use of space as an interface. And the last type is meta. This is an interesting evolution of three interfaces listed above. For instance, the screen blur in Outlast, or blood drops on the screen when you wounded in shooters like Call of Duty. It boosts emotions without traditional visible UI. Its main feature is the same control, plus the additional of spatial elements to the screen to improve immersion or navigation. Good examples of the meta interfaces are the games like Forza Horizon and Death Stranding. Game interfaces provide emotion, control, and support immersion, making the game flow smoothly. But how does a game interface differ from a non-game interface? In short, the key feature of non-game interfaces is efficiency in performing tasks. A non-game interface does not need to entertain us. When we open Trello, we need to get the job done as quickly as possible. And most importantly, do it correctly without struggling with the interface. In addition to providing understanding and forming habits for users during their work. And non-game interfaces must also be readable and understandable. The fact is that during the work, a person should only be given the tools with which they can only navigate the application, predictable and repeatable manner. This is so that they can do their work first and foremost. A non-game interface is about performing tasks in the real world, while a game interface is primarily about entertainment, emotions, and focusing on having fun while playing. So what the final words? Game and non-game interfaces are like two sides of a coin. Games like Death Stranding 2 or Doom pull you into thrilling adventures with interfaces that feels like a part of the story. Apps like Trello, Google Docs, or Slack help you tackle daily tasks with clear, simple designs. Designers can learn from both. Games show you how to spark emotions, while apps teach you clarity and efficiency. A great interface, whether in the game or an app, feels natural, helps you reach your goals, and leaves you smiling.